My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of the Different Podcast, I chat with Steve Chalke all about being honest. We talk about the ZOUD, the zone of uncomfortable discussion, and we try to understand why we sometimes dance around being honest and the overwhelming feeling of fearing disconnection from others if we choose honesty as our path. And in a world where honesty can seem in short supply, we can't help but notice how dishonesty erodes trust. This topic matters. We hope this episode begins a conversation that you will feel able to keep going with your people too. Hey Steve, good to see you again.
And you, Jill, as ever, as always.
How are you this very day?
I'm having a good day, actually.
Good.
Well, I'm here with you, which is good. But yeah. I've had a good day generally. All the bits of it so far
have all added up.
They've all added up. And so far it's going well. It's not over, so you never know what's going to happen.
Anything could happen.
Indeed. Do you live with that? Sometimes I think you should just end the day when you hear a bit of good news or you should definitely celebrate it because 15 minutes later something terrible could happen or you hear and your mood goes up and down depending on where you've got to. But at this moment,
it's all good.
It's all looking crackingly good.
So we are going to talk today about being honest. Which is quite a topic, isn't it?
It's quite a topic, and it's a very big topic, and sometimes quite hard.
It is. There's this thing that I talk about sometimes with our staff in Oasis, where I talk about this tendency we can all have to dance around truth. Mm. So, especially in our relationships with one another, we can love the idea of being honest, but actually. We do this really special little dance where I'm like, oh, Steve, I really need to talk to you about this. And then we don't actually say what we want to say. We temper it or we alter it or we don't quite talk about what we need to talk about.
No.
It's a dance.
It's a dance and we don't get round to
dealing with the thing.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of reasons for that.
Yeah.
Aren't there? Sometimes we're not honest, I think, because we're deliberately not telling the truth.
Yeah, there is that.
Sometimes we're not honest because we tell a version of the truth, which is very much slanted to the way that, it makes us look good or leaves other people out, gives us with the credit instead of someone else. Yeah, sometimes we don't tell the truth because we're scared of telling the truth.
Yeah. There's a massive,
for whatever reason.
Yeah. There's a massive thing about a fear of disconnection. So if I say something to you, because I'm a human being and belonging is vital for my ongoing thriving and all the rest of it, there is a if I say this, is Steve gonna reject me? If I say this, then does that break something between us? And that fear of disconnection can overwhelm our commitment to speaking honestly with one another. And for some people, that is just too much. They can't go there because there's no trust.
Yeah, and it's because of the way the different parts of our brain works. Our emotional brain, our deeper brain, sometimes it gets called the animal brain, but it's to do with our emotions. That deep brain, its job is survival.
Yeah,
keep us alive and keep us connected, to protect us. Our higher brain, if you like, our frontal lobes, they're about analysing and rational. So the rational brain might know what the truth is, but the deeper brain is saying, don't be stupid. Don't sacrifice yourself here. Will you be rejected, etc. So often it's a fear, isn't it? A fear of exposure, a fear of being laughed at, ridiculed, saying the wrong thing, not understanding, all of those things. And we all are dealing with that. Am I the real deal? Am I, what do people think of me? So that makes us shut up and keep quiet sometimes.
Yeah. But then we can walk away and be kicking ourselves.
So we didn't say it.
But we didn't say it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we want to do that, isn't there? Because deep inside of us is this kind of magnetic pull that we have to our values. Like what matters, what really matters is that sense of integrity we have to who we are and living and leading out of our values. So this really matters to me. I need to speak to Steve about this. I'm going to trust that it'll be okay. And if it's not okay, it doesn't matter because I really need to hold on to my integrity in this.
Yeah. And some of that is about finding the right way of telling the truth as well, because there are painful and hard ways of telling the truth. Yeah. I told him what he needed to know. I told her what everybody thinks. Well, you destroyed that person.
Yeah. And that's not right, is it?
No, that's not right. So people struggle with knowing how to tell the truth and how to break difficult news to people and then often just chicken out of it. And so an unhealthy situation can continue for years sometimes, can't it? Because no one has quite got the courage to confront things. I remember talking to a bunch of young women who'd come back from a hen weekend. And one of them said to me in the week following, everybody in the entire room knew that she shouldn't marry him except her. And I said, man. So why didn't you tell her? Why didn't
you say something?
And this friend said, well, we were on the hen weekend and it was too late and she wants to do it, etc., etc. So it is very complicated. And of course, they'd not told her the truth because they didn't want to hurt her. But by not telling her the truth,
the hurt becomes greater.
Yeah. I've had to do that, just not very often, but I've sat, because being a vicar, I marry people to each other. And sometimes, just occasionally, I've said to them, if I were you, I'm not you. And I'll tell you how I caveat it. But I say, I'm not you. But if I were you, I wouldn't get married yet. I always say yet. Then I say, look, you're free. You're human. You're free. God gives you freedom. I'm not just about to remove it. So if you want to marry each other, of course I'll marry you. Because I figure keeping your pastoral relationship with them is really worth keeping, you know. So I say, I wouldn't do that now until you deal with this issue, that issue, and this issue. You've got to be precise and say, this is why. And I think you should go away and talk about that. But if you choose to get married, of course I'd do it because I care about you. I love you both and I will do that. And what I've found sometimes is, love is blind and all of that kind of thing, or infatuation's blind, to be more accurate. But more than once, couples have come back to me afterwards. And either when they're really struggling and it's all falling apart or the cracks are beginning to show. Normally, actually, when it's really gone over the edge because they try to put it all off because we try to hide from truth and we don't want to be honest and we don't want to expose ourselves. But they come back and sit down with me because I was the person who they say, I should have listened to you or we should have listened to you. But it is a tough call. So your approach... Because Brené Brown says this thing. She says, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Yes, I agree with that. And honesty is not an excuse to say what the heck you like. And especially if your motive is to take people down. That's not what honesty is it? So in those conversations you have like that, and I have some conversations that take a similar kind of... What are you thinking about in your head that gets you to that clear is kind? Well, I think that my goal in life should be, I hope it always is, but we're all a bit broken, aren't we? To build people up. So when a couple come to see me, my job isn't to ridicule them or destroy them. or leave them broken or leave them alone. It's only to build them up. It genuinely is for their long-term fulfillment. And unless you actually believe that's your motive, perhaps you shouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
But if you know that's your motive and you know you'll stick by this person, whatever their decision is, you'll stick by them because you're going to stick by them because you want the best for them, then I think that should be the controlling factor. And in actual fact, I think that leaks out through who you are. They get it. So that's, it's not happened to me a lot in life, but, there have been, famous episodes in my life when people have turned up on my doorstep on their own. I've just left. Yeah. I can't go on with this. A mum turned up with a young baby, just weeks old. And, she burst into tears. I should have listened. Well, I said, we are where we are, So
it's not a moment
no. So I wasn't saying this to you to kind of, for to prove I'm right. I was saying it because I care about you. Well, I still care about you. So here we are. So let's get on with where we are.
Yeah.
Every situation's redeemable.
Yeah.
There's always hope. I don't believe any situation or any person is beyond hope.
Yeah. We talk about, so one of the things we talk about in Oasis is, and I did some work on this just recently with staff, was talking about the ZOUD. So it's this way of understanding how to have those kind of conversations that feel difficult when everything is kicking off in your brain saying, don't, this is too awkward, or if you say this, then they're going to reject you. And it's really helpful because it talks about the elephant in the room.
Right. What does ZOUD mean then, Jill?
Well, it's the ZOUD. It's like the zone of uncomfortable debate.
Right.
Z-O. I nearly said American there.
Yeah.
Zone of uncomfortable
there
debate or discussion.
That's what a ZOUD is.
So if you imagine 3 concentric circles, so the middle elephant in the room, the real thing that needs to be talked about, and then the zone of uncomfortable debate sits around that. And then the zone of comfortable debate or discussion sits outside. And it happens in every conversation. So we'll begin, say it's you and me. We'll go, oh, did you see the football? The weather's fun. That's all. There's nothing tricky about that. But we know the elephant in the room exists. So what we're trying to do is get to the elephant. And in order to get to the elephant in the room, we have to go into the ZOUD. We have to go into the zone of uncomfortable discussion. And one of the things that's brilliant about the ZOUD is just being able to say, Steve, let's enter the ZOUD. And there's this thing that triggers, if everyone has that understanding of what the ZOUD is, this is what we talked about in a staff thing in Oasis, was if we all have that shared understanding, then instead of our brain going, oh, I need to back away, this is going to be awful, it's sent a message to the right rational part of our brain to say, there's nothing to panic about. This is just a necessary chat that we need to have. And it becomes much easier to, instead of dancing around truth, actually having a way of making that pathway, that route in, and keep checking your motive while you're in it. And I find it really helpful.
Yeah, no, it's extraordinarily helpful, isn't it? To be able to kind of put it on the table and say, this is uncomfortable for both of us or all of us.
Yeah.
But it's really important that we do this because of our relationship.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because of our commitment to one another.
Exactly.
If we didn't care, we wouldn't be here. We just ignore all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a pre-qualifying thing for that is trust, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because I can only be in a zone of uncomfortable debate with a person who I think genuinely does want to hold a good relationship with me and care about me, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But if you think, well, this person's just here to assassinate me and put me down, then it's very hard to be in that conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, for me, anyone that ever doesn't disagree with me, I also struggle with. because I'm like, are you just buttering up to me? Are you just like affirming everything I'm saying? But actually, this isn't very genuine, or you're just like trust, knowing that you can trust the person you're with, that they're curious and they want the best for you. I think is so important in the whole thing about being honest.
Sometimes, I'm just reflecting on what you're saying and then thinking about my experience of life. There've been times in my life when I felt compelled to say something. So, you were saying you got to live with yourself. You got to be honest to yourself. You got to live by your values. But in living by your values, you're going to say something that is really going to land a bomb. So it's not that, hey, we're together. Now let's enter the zone of uncomfortable debate, knowing we're committed to each other. There's sometimes. So for instance, me, the very decade and a half ago, I don't know how long ago it was, the champion of saying that when same-sex marriages can happen, I will perform them, and even before they can happen, I still do these blessing services, which are actually marriages. Trust me, So and then I in saying that, I had to convince a lot of people. I wrote about it and had to convince a lot of people that it was okay to do. I wanted to do it and was determined to do it. And then I had to convince a publisher to publish it and, pay the price of all of that. But I knew that
it was the right thing.
We wouldn't even get into the zone of uncomfortable debate. I'd get into the zone of absolute outright rejection, which I did.
But with some people, you did enter the ZOUD, and it's the people that you entered the ZOUD.
Yes, which is why I did.
Let's do this.
So So I often think, somebody
came. It's not about not being truthful.
No. Somebody came to see me some time after that, and they told me that they had a job where if they said what I said, they would be sacked, and they would therefore they were the breadwinner for their household, and they said, I could be as open and honest as you, Steve, but I will get sacked. I will lose my job, and I don't know what will happen then. And I said to them, different ones of us in life are in different positions and for different reasons. And in actual fact, it's easier for me to do this than you. And I really not sure whether you should be open and honest about what you think at this time. At this point, don't feel pushed and don't rush. So there's sometimes, isn't there, when you believe something and your values tell you something, but you don't need to be the person who's pushing the whole thing forward.
Who's the first to go, or that you don't need to be. No, and there's always nuance, right? Like, so we live with working out: is this the moment? Is this the right time? Is this the space to do it? And in that, what you've just described, however many years ago it was now, you created the conditions in Family Oasis to be able to take us all with you in that journey, didn't you? And so there was a huge amount of work that went on to like that you did to make that possible. But I'll never forget you talking about wanting to almost put a protective layer over everyone by you being the person that was going to say what needed to be said. And,
that was definitely, I remember that. I used to talk about this.
An umbrella almost.
Umbrella, air cover for people somehow. I wanted for everybody in Oasis, everyone everywhere actually, but everyone in Oasis to know that they were safe. A movement where they were safe. Yeah. So I needed to say that. That's not the same thing, is it? I remember talking to somebody who part of Oasis, and she said to me, she was gay, I'm out at work. I'm not out at home. And then she said, is that all right? And I said, of course it's all right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of course it's all right.
Yeah.
It's just all right. I didn't go on to say, well, there might come a time when you want to be out home, because it wasn't for me to pry into why she didn't feel she could be out. I assume it was actually because she knew her parents, or one of her parents,
didn't feel safe.
Wouldn't, and it would break their relationship or break the relationship of her parents. Or that. So she was weighing that up. And so there's a situation in which, would you say, it's right not to be honest?
Well, you're being honest. She's being honest with whoever. It's being honest with themselves, aren't they? And and I think we've got people that we know for whom that journey of that being honest with others is a process that they go through, isn't there? It's a journey. It's months, years, and all of that is, I think there's a massive thing about this trust in relationships, how the task, I feel like the task is always, not a task, but the joy is, how do I show up in my relationships with people so that other person feels safe to say what they need to say and to know that I am trustworthy with what it is they want to say to me, and that I can do everything I can to help them, to your point, be who they need to be, but also to live out their values. So, and that just takes them on a little bit further of their journey, doesn't it? But I think the job is always how am I showing up as trustworthy for people? Because I think if I can do that, then people feel safe when they're with you.
What you're saying reminds me of a story I got of some friends who they were in a relationship together, a young man and a young woman, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and they came and they told me this. They sat down with me one night and they told me this was a huge thing in their lives. And they said, you're the only person we're telling this to because we want your advice. So I gave them my advice for what it was worth. And they were grateful. And they said, you tell no one else. And I said, yeah, of course, tell no one else. Anyway, years went by. Years and years went by. And then I was with them in a room with lots of other people that we knew. And they blurted out their story. They told everybody this story, and everybody in the room knew me, do you see, as well. So they told me, and the couple telling the story, they looked at everybody in the room. We were all close friends, and they were shocked. And they said, well, don't any of you know this? We're telling this story. Like, everyone knows this story. We told Steve this story years ago. And I just said, you told me not to tell anyone, so I haven't. They thought in that situation, I'm not told, they were just telling people, chatting with people about what they already knew. And they were really blown away that no one knew this. I think quite shocked and quite uncomfortable that nobody knew this story that they thought was popular knowledge by then.
Didn't quite land as they thought.
No, it didn't land. It was like a bombshell dropped into the evening rather than a piece of casual conversation. Yeah, because I'd done what they said and not told anybody anything. But that is, of course, how you build trust, isn't it? Yeah. You build trust by remembering the commitments you've made. Which is why, by the way, just changing the subject slightly, lying, because we've talked about reasons why you might not tell the whole truth. You might be uncomfortable. You don't want to be exposed. There all sorts of reasons why, being honest doesn't mean I've got to tell everybody everything.
No, that's oversharing.
Yeah. So yeah. But lying is a different thing. And I always say to people that lying, because, I've tried it, honestly, you got to be really bright to do it because you have to remember what you've told everybody. And I always say to people, look, I'm just not clever enough And my memory's too short to do that. So unless you're really, really smart, just stick to the truth for that reason, if for no other reason, because you'll get found out. You cannot possibly remember everybody you told this story or that story, and then they go tell other people, of course. So stick to the truth for your own sake, let alone anybody else's.
So the amount of energy you're using up, like trying to remember all the things.
Blimey, the amount of storage space you need to use up in your brain, don't you? I mean, to be fair, I can't remember what happened yesterday. So, no, well, it
might be quite helpful.
So recently, with my laptop, I was trying to download some videos. I was making some videos and trying to send them some, edit them and send to people. My computer just kind of dried up, and it said it hadn't got enough hard disk space, and I couldn't do it. And it was, even then I laughed to myself because I thought, that's just like my brain. I've just not got enough hard disk space. No. That's my problem. You can buy new hard disk. You can buy an external hard drive for your computer. I just bought one, 500 gigabytes or something. No,
I don't even know what that means, but that sounds big.
It was a big one, like that,
Impressive.
Yeah. Well, I've got to put all this stuff on that to send to the States. Someone's coming from the States to get it. I thought, if only I could buy an external hard drive for my brain, but I can't.
So being honest is one of our 9 habits in Oasis as well, isn't it? And that relationship of being honest to creating trust. And yet in the world, when you look around the world, when you look at news feeds and all the rest of it, Steve, the culture of being honest feels like not a high priority.
No, it's not a high priority. You're just selling a story. You're making promises that you'll deliver on this or deliver on that, empty promises. And the problem with that is it creates a cynicism, doesn't it? And cynicism takes hold in our society, and then nobody believes anything that they ever hear because they figure, I've been lied to so often, I withdraw. Everybody becomes scared of everyone else. So I think that if you become a little honesty breather and breeder,
absolutely,
you become a little picture of hope in this barren desert. You become a life on a lifeless day to people. So that's what we've all got to do. And the more we breed hope by being honest, the more we enable others to return that with us. And that's a much better place to be, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, so much better.
So be honest with someone today, not in that, brash way to put them down, but be open, be authentic. That's a good word.
Well, choose not to put a filter on. Yeah. You think, you look at people's, not that I do much, but you look at people's profile on, say, a social media or feed or something, and you're like, that's got a filter on it, that picture. Or you look at, a load of stories that come through on TikTok, and you just thought, well, that's fabricated, or someone's profile on LinkedIn or whatever it is, and you're just like, that's not true.
No, exactly. And the other time, a few times back, I was telling you a story about my friend Tony Campolo, who died not so long ago, and several friends, I wasn't there when this happened, but several friends of mine told me they were there, and they were working with him, and he went to speak in a very big church, and they asked him to pray a prayer at the end of what he'd been saying. He was a brilliant speaker, and he prayed this prayer, and in actual fact, a guy called Marvin, who told me the story, he said, I was stood with Tony at the door of this church, this huge, thousands of people there, and this woman came out, and she said to him, your prayer was awful. It was a really awful prayer. All the grammar, the way you get your sentence construction, it was just dreadful, And Tony looked at her, said, well, it's okay. I wasn't talking to you. And I thought, there you go. That's a lovely bit of honesty, isn't it? And honesty that overcame her brittle honesty, which was about put down. His loving engagement was okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't talking to you.
Yeah.
So it was honest.
Yeah.
But it was caring even in the honesty.
So being honest creates the foundation built on trust that gives us security and the safety for everything else. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.